Virginia Heslinga is an educator, mentor, author, presenter, researcher, friend, wife, mother, grandmother, traveler, and a child of God. She looks forward to putting value in each day with gratitude, relationships, and creativity. Dr. Virginia Heslinger has written curriculum, stories, and plays used in churches and schools. And in her 50-plus years teaching pre-kindergarten through graduate school students in the USA and other countries, Mexico, Istanbul, China, she has tried to exemplify the love of Jesus. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Just Talking About Jesus. I have Virginia Heslinga with me today. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to be able to talk with you.
I kind of met up with Virginia on a group,
Author circle.
an
Yeah.
author circle group, just trying to figure out how to promote her work and the different things. But when I kind of looked into her story, it's like, whoa, yeah, this is a person we need to share. I think the reason why is because when a person experiences a whole bunch of things, you learn so much about who
Mhm.
God is,
Yes,
right? Right.
that's very yeah.
And I think too, just the older you are, the more you've figured out and whatever. So what one of the defining things that happened to you was being in a fire that destroyed your house. Tell us about that and kind of how God worked your character through that experience.
Well, we put it in the place and time. It was 1965. I was 12 years old. My parents were heading up a Red Cross meeting to raise money from the county for the Red Cross. So I was babysitting for my two brothers and the pastor's son. Pastor was away at a convention. So I had the 2-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old and me. And I was being hassled by the toddler that needed a lot of extra attention and by my brothers. And I finally settled down into watching, I think it was Ben Casey. If anybody remembers Ben Casey back in the 60s, came right after Dr. Kildare. And so all of a sudden the baby started crying so loudly. So I rushed up the stairs. And as I'm going up the stairs, all the lights went out, the TV went off, everything was gone. And I went into the room and I don't even have a consciousness of praying, but I saw a wall of fire because my drapes in my room were on fire, and that's where the toddler was in the crib. And you can read more about it in Grace Interlace. But when we got out of the house and I got down and I realized it was just the 9-year-old brother and the toddler, I pushed the toddler into, I said, hold him. And I went back in. And for people that don't believe in angels, this would be a hard part to take. But I tell you, there was a young man that came in and he went up the stairs with me. And I had to put a wet washcloth over my face. I had learned from, actually, I think it was the TV show Fury, that when you went into a fire, if you put something wet over your face, you could get farther in the smoke. And the young man didn't realize until a long time afterwards, he never had anything over his face. And I would have stayed and probably died trying to get my younger brother. But the young man took me down the stairs and outside. And I turned to my brother and the toddler, and I didn't know what to do. I took them down off the porch and I turned to look back and see if the young man had gone back in. He wasn't anywhere around. And I went to the neighbors, and there were somebody called the fire department again after me. We lived in Union, New Jersey, and Union and Elizabeth came right together. And because I had called the fire department early and the responder didn't know couldn't tell from the address which town to call, they didn't call anybody right away. They were trying to figure out from a map. So this is back before 911, 1965. And so there was a lot of confusion. And when they finally came, we had multiple fire departments and multiple police, and I was lost in the crowd. And I saw them take my parents and the brother and the toddler away, and I was sitting against a neighbor's house. That's the picture that's on the book cover. And um and I just remember thinking, God, I'll do anything if you just make sure that my younger brother survives. I'll go to the worst place on earth and work for the rest of my life. And yet you know, I never thought that God wasn't there, but that prayer wasn't answered. So there was a lot of trauma after that in my family and in me. And I was reading an article yesterday that I hadn't realized that hyper independence and wanting to solve things yourself comes frequently from people that have experienced trauma.
Mm.
That it's not that they're trying to be standalone and they're not trying to be, I'm Mr. able to do everything. It's just that the trauma has caused them to figure I have to take care of everything on my own.
Mhm.
But as a Christian, because I became a Christian, a believer at an early age, and I knew the stories of the fiery furnace and I knew the miracles of the Bible, I just, I existed knowing that God was there, but everything kind of shut down for years.
Yeah. Well, that's trauma. I mean, that is trauma, to do that, and you lost your brother. I mean,
Yes.
it's you had to have felt responsible for that as well.
Yes. There is a scene in the book, and the people that have commented to me, it's what the first thing that my father said to me when I was taken by a policeman to a neighbor's house, and people that had been taken to the hospital showed up later in another police car. And yeah, the thing that my father says to me that kind of set the tone for the next 40 years.
For being in charge. Wow, that had been terrifying. I mean, just to even, just as a kid, to be in that, even if it was just you, it would be terrifying to know what
Mhm.
to do and to get out and how to reach your parents and how to, you know, what to do next and how to just process all of that.
Definitely. Yeah. And you shut down and you go on, and I was a good girl and I went to church and I was in youth group and I did all those things. And I don't think that I really wrestled with it much until my 30s when a wonderful friend had a brain tumor and I just got so aggravated, said to God, you know, I'm just not speaking to you. Now, I'm married to a pastor. So if you can imagine, it's a little hard to be a pastor's wife. And when people would call on me at something and say, will you say grace for I said, why don't you ask so and so? I knew that God was there. I knew that he knew all my thoughts, but actually it was almost 2 years that I went through not wanting to. I thought, okay, he can read my thoughts, he can read them. I'm not talking to him. And and so that was in my 30s, That was yeah, God is gracious and forgiving and carries us through all our ridiculousness, but I always knew he was there, always.
Isn't it great that God has broad shoulders?
Lots
We
of
can be
grace.
mad at him and he's just going, okay, okay, I'll just wait for you. I'm right here. When you get
It's
ready.
like our kids having tantrums. Right?
It's just that's just another one of those amazing characteristics of him that it just like, okay, all right, I'm still here. And then, I had a similar situation happen years ago, but it took like, oh my gosh, I was well into my 40s before God finally went, okay, you want to talk about this now, and see where I was at the time. So it just, so I guess that's one of our lessons, isn't it? That just to see that it's God can answer no,
Yeah,
one. He might do a wait or a no, and he might do a yes, but it's not always going to be a yes.
that's right. And I feel like I'm a slow learner. I've told people that even though I'm a believer and I follow the Lord, I'm a slow learner because I have to learn those lessons about trust and waiting over and over again.
Don't we all? But each of those things, though, I think they're repeat things because it's a different aspect that we learn from each of those. You know,
Yes.
each time. It's like it's not like we didn't actually learn to trust in that situation, but it's also like a broader, there's always like more to the elements of it, right?
There is deeper layers. It's like C.S. Lewis going deeper in, you know? Yeah.
Deeper and deeper layers. But how do you think that that whole incident enriched your character? You know, the character of who you are, or how you.
Well, like I said, I think because of what happened in my family after it, I didn't really trust marriage because my parents were strong Christians, but everything fell apart after my brother died. Um, and I didn't trust parenting because I saw what happened after the traumatic event affected all of us. And I think that somebody asked me a question recently, when you were brave. They asked when you were brave, and I said, I'm not a brave person, but because I am teachable, when God brought my husband into my life, I did follow lots of leading and testing, and so I took the step to get married, even though I wasn't sure about marriage and having children. I wasn't sure about parenting, but I took the step to have children and traveling far away to be part of a project in China. I had never imagined going so far away, but I'm learning about trusting even now. And so it affected my character that I just learned to depend on God rather than trying to do it all myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as we go along, when we depend on God and we see where He's at, then it's just easy. It's easy to go, oh, well, you were here then, and you will still be there later on. I just interviewed a gal about her book. Well, it wasn't mainly about her book, but at any rate, a lot of it. We had a lot of things in common because I just written a Bible study called Journeys. And so, with the idea that you're thinking back to the things in your life, those milestones and things. And then she had a book that was similar to that, a
Uh-huh.
study like that. But just all the overreaching thing is if you're journaling and thinking back to those milestones, just like Joshua did, we're going to create an altar here to remember these things where God
Yes.
was. Those are those
Yes.
moments that help us build on trusting God because you were here, you were here, and you were here in that situation. So now I'm in this
Mhm.
situation. So you're going to be there again.
That's- Yeah, that's part of the layering of learning. Yep.
Yeah, and I think those are the things that we can share with other people, to say, well, that God was here for me. He'll be the same God is going to be there for you in whatever
And
way.
I think the other thing that affected my character is although I was wanting to be very self-sufficient and people were shocked at the story, even people in my family that never knew anything past the funeral. They didn't know what went on in the house afterwards. They didn't know any of that. And I was very self-contained. And yet my career for over 50 years has been teaching all different grade levels in different countries. So as far as speaking and leading, I've had to do that a lot and I love it, but it was very different from my character that was, I'll keep it all inside. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, because God gifted you in that area too, so He gave you the confidence to do that area. But I think we can departmentalize things.
No, no.
And like that. So tell us about you. You worked in China and just all kinds of things. What was that journey like for you?
Well, that was another learning time because we had moved from New Jersey to Massachusetts and looking for another teaching position, I didn't find something right away. And I was very frustrated because I thought if God led us here, then why can't I find something? And so I said to my husband, it's cold here. I don't have a job I like. I've got to find something. And I really don't like the cold. I don't know what it's like where you live, but like this morning it was in the low 20s here,
Ooh.
and it's as cold as Virginia gets. But in Massachusetts, it's below zero and there's lots of snow and cold. And so in the summer, it was at a coffee time at church. I heard some people talking and they said, "Oh, I had a great summer last year, but I could never do it again." "What did you do?" the other person asked. And they said, "Oh, I worked for a NGO in China, Amity Foundation. And you go and you help teachers of English practice speaking and understanding, and then they can help. But it's only in remote areas. And it was so hot. I thought I was in Miami." So I went over and I said, "Excuse me, I just heard your conversation. Where can I sign up?" Love to be warm for an entire summer. So, yeah, it wasn't a really selfless thing to do. I just thought I'm getting away from everything. I don't know what God is doing to my life because he hasn't given me and I'm just leaving the country.
So, but he
So,
was, but it,
yeah,
he places that person in your shot to give you
yeah.
that little prompting and whatever, and then you just go,
And it
Yeah.
was the best thing for my faith. And again, this is a long time afterwards because, and I've seen a lot of changes in China because when I first went, it was 2004. And the president of China then was very excited about American English and opening to the world. Well, the last time I was there in 2017, it was very different. So I'm doing a series called Did You Eat? Because in northern and central China, they've had famine for such a long time that one of the questions, like we say, "How are you?" They'll just come up, "Did you eat?" And so the first book in 2004 is China Sweet and Sour. And the other one comes out the 12th of December. That's China Spicy and Salty. And hopefully by next summer, I'll have China Sharp and Zesty.
Do you have recipes in there too?
The first book has recipes. Yeah, not the second one.
What's the theme of those of each of them?
Well, in each of them, it starts with a problem and an embarrassing problem, a tough problem. But again, the theme is God provides. When we are ready to think, "Oh, what can I possibly do?" Calm down and God will provide. And I'll give you one example. And the one that's coming out on the 12th, the nurse that was on my team, we got to Shanghai airport and we've been traveling for hours and hours from Boston. She left her carry-on bag that had her glasses and her medicine in it in the airport. And we didn't realize till we transferred to the domestic airport and flew to Beijing that it was gone. So we figured we would get some help from the translator that was coming to be our guide, but we didn't know when we would be able to get the medicine and glasses that she needed. So we went out for our first full day in Beijing. And when we came back to the place where we were staying, Kutang in Beijing, the man at the desk said, "Your bag is here." And we said, "What?" He said, "Your bag, it came." And he brought it around and there was a note with it. Well, the person that had been teaching me some Chinese in Massachusetts, this had to be God, had a cousin that was traveling home to see his family in Shanghai. And this little pink suitcase stood out to him in the airport on a chair by itself. And he went over to look at it and he saw the name on it. And my Chinese teacher had given him my name and the name of everybody on my team. And he thought, "This is from one of these people that my cousin knew." And he picked up the case and he called his cousin and he said, "Your friend Virginia, where is she staying?" And so she told him where we were staying, and he had it, shipped day delivery to where we were staying. Now, how many thousands of people go through Shanghai airport? And it was the same international, from Los Angeles to Shanghai, but still there were thousands of there is no, so that was the end of our first full day in Beijing. And I said to the team, when anything else comes up, we have to remember this because God is here and he's going to get us through anything that comes up. But there was a lot that came up. So it was a good lesson to learn repeatedly.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, I mean that's a totally just
It's a miracle. Yeah.
it is a total miracle, to have that happen. And I just love how God
Yes.
orchestrates things. It could be, like,
It's
oh gosh, this
amazing.
person gets this, and all the pieces all line up the way they're supposed to.
And
Yeah,
then you look at something like the fire, and I think, some prayers you pray and they're answered immediately in a positive way. And other prayers you pray, they're not answered in a positive way, or they're not answered for years, and we don't know why, but God is always there, at least in
yeah,
my head and my heart.
yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that years in retrospect that you were thankful for from the fire?
I think because of the way it ended up many decades later, I was grateful that relationships could be healed before people like my father died, that we actually had an opportunity to have a conversation and talk about things he would never talk about before. So I'm thankful that, and I had prayed for forgiveness. Forgiveness is, I read a book by Desmond Tutu and his daughter on forgiveness. And the decision is you can work on forgiving in your head, and it might take a long time to get to your heart. So that made a lot of sense to me. And slowly I saw over the years that with this, I will forgive. I need to think forgiving. I need to ask Jesus to help me and, be loving. Yeah, I'm very thankful that I learned that forgiveness is a discipline that you can start in your head and it'll move to your heart. And God honors that. I really believe it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a whole topic right there. Forgiveness,
Yeah.
it's just that, yeah. But ultimately, it's not about freeing the other person, it's about freeing yourself, you know.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Once you totally can forgive the person, it's just like, okay, yeah, now I don't have to think about him anymore. If I do, it's going to be some long ago distant something that I don't have anything. And it's also trusting that God's going to deal with that person in whatever
Mhm.
way needs to be done with them. And it's not us to be the one that thinks of all those things. Man, I could, you know.
And personalities are different. I'm sure, I mean, it took me years before I would pray for forgiveness for feeling that in my heart. And then it just, I guess it's another miracle when some people can forgive, in minutes or hours. But there's some traumas that I think it takes a really long time, and it takes talking with Jesus and walking with Jesus before we learn those lessons. And
Yeah,
again, I have to learn them over and over.
yeah. Well, I mean, and if you use Jesus' example on the cross as forgiving his enemies, but he was also God, you know,
Right. Yeah.
and he also could say that at the moment just because he knew the big picture and he knew whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had an administrator that did me wrong for had a long, 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 many years of working through that. And that's the only one in my life that I just have had such a hard time getting over. But I think I'm there. I think I'm finally
Oh,
there.
that's great.
It's years,
Yeah. No,
It can be years.
the timing is different for every person, and God knows our hearts and knows us better than we know ourselves. I just encourage people to, talk to him about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And over and over and over again, because he doesn't care if we keep coming back with the same.
Now, mainly, I've written these memoirs on life experiences, but I did write a historical novel called Wounded Dove, and it's based on everything true, but it came out as a historical novel because I changed all the names. I didn't want anybody to sue me, and I condensed the timeline a little bit, and I told it in first person, so that's why it had to be, a historical novel. But the person in there that overcomes so much. She got polio in the polio epidemic in Massachusetts in the early 1900s. She overcomes so much, and yet she's naive and trusts somebody that anybody would have trusted. And it takes the love of a sibling to rescue her from a very terrible situation. And um, and that's another thing that you can overcome a lot and yet be susceptible to making a mistake in another area. And God, He provided that sister that went right to directly confronting the problem. So I think God has provided people in my life from childhood and that fire time, even and even before that, the people that guided me to faith. God has always provided people to come to me and talk to me and be a support to me when I really needed to work through something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the flip side, he's provided you for other people
I hope so. Yeah.
as well. So tell me a little bit more about things in China. What exactly did you do while you were in China?
Well, Amity usually sends people to remote areas because you're doing it as a volunteer. All they have to do is give you a place to stay and your meals. And it can be very different from situation to situation. So you work with the teachers. You don't have to be a teacher. So, for instance, they would like every team to have a nurse. Well, I was fortunate to have a friend who was an RN who had mentored and taught nurses. So she did health lessons in English. And then my husband went a couple of times with me, and he did conversational English, and he would do social studies and geography. Although you have to be very careful, there's certain things you can't say, and everything is supervised. And it was very nerve-wracking when he went with me because when he got his visa, they put a bright yellow card in his passport that said, "This man is not to preach anywhere in China." So even like having public prayer, he wasn't supposed to do anything like that.
Oh,
It's very interesting. So we all helped work with teachers, and as a teacher and as having a doctorate in education, I tried to give teachers strategies that have been used globally. And they don't know this. When they go to college, if they go to college, and in the remote rural areas, there's people that teach that have never been to college. When they go to college, they study English. That's their major, and they know it a lot better than we all do. But speaking and comprehending and listening, that's a real struggle. And they were trying to improve that. Yeah. So that's what Amity does a lot of things. They have a deaf ministry because in China, just like in the book Wounded Dove in the early 1900s in this country, if you have a disability, there's nothing for you. Your family can take care of you. So they have a ministry Amity has to Down syndrome people to teach them job skills. They have deaf ministry. They have emergency, like when there's earthquakes. And they have doctors that go as volunteers and teachers that go as volunteers. It's a great program, but it's changed in the past few years because of how the government has changed
mhm. Yeah.
the past few
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that had been interesting. Just being in another country is interesting anyway. I think even being in different parts of the country of the United States is interesting.
It is. It is. My first teaching experience in another country was in Mexico, and then I did a program at a college in Istanbul, but the longest I had 8 different years of visiting China. So, and I just found it the remote areas are so different than the big cities that a lot of tourists see. So it's challenging, but it was wonderful. Mhm.
What were some stories maybe of people that you met, Chinese people that you met, or their just some of the traditions or even things that you encountered that were interesting or challenging?
Well, we were all very proud that we learned to use chopsticks well, quite a, and we weren't sure if we would ever be invited to any of our students' homes because that's not required. You can just live in a dormitory, or sometimes they'll put you up in a hotel or the student dormitory, or but this one teacher that invited me early on to her family's home, it was such a big deal in this remote area where we would probably be the only Americans that they would ever meet. That her parents, I sat down at the table and they came out very proudly with a fork and a spoon. And, they have very little, and they had gone out to buy that so that I would be comfortable at their house. And there's so many details of hospitality that they take seriously. It really is very heartwarming and can almost put you to shame to think of people with very little doing their best to make you feel comfortable, even with something that simple. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, that makes you feel like, validated or just, it does make you feel important, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then the other thing you see lifestyles, like two teachers, a couple invited us to their home, and they lived in a walled area. Most of the things where we were there were like mud brick, and there was a bathroom facility for the entire compound, all the apartments. So here they were, two teachers working full time that had a three-room apartment and this big community outhouse for showers and bathrooms. And when in the evening, one of the people on our team needed to go to the bathroom, they got a lantern and took us out to, as we needed. And when we got ready to eat our meal, it was just floored me like Bible times that they came out with a big bowl of water that they'd heated in the stovetop that they had, and a towel, and we could rinse our hands. And it was just, I find it extremely valuable to realize that in the 21st century, people live so differently and yet with grace and wonderful hospitality. And I really saw that in rural China.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, because it does bridge a gap, and it also, if they're providing hospitality for you, they're feeling like they can. I mean,
Mhm.
like there's a cultural, like there's not, what am I going to say? Like a wall between being able to take that gap from I'm just going to learn from you to I'm going to invite you into my life.
Yes, and it was wonderful. The supervision, every school has a communist supervisor, and I was teaching holidays. And in teaching holidays, I thought when I sat next to him at the first meal where he was present at the meal, I said to my translator, I want to tell him what I'm teaching. And she said, okay. So I said to him, excuse me, I'm teaching holidays. So if you come into my classroom and you see Jesus or Moses on the board, I want you to know they connect to our holidays. I thought I may as well just say it out because they
Right?
always have somebody that listens or watches. And yeah, so each of the times that we went, that's always interesting in a country where you know that everything is being supervised. Yeah.
Did it make you fearful?
I wasn't fearful as much as challenged. Like when the first time that I went was right after we got into the war with shock and awe that Bush had, shock and awe. And so um, Abu Ghraib had happened. It was in the news. I went there in June to China, and I think that was in the news in April. And one of the first questions that a student asked and stood up, what do Americans think about Abu Ghraib? And I said, we think it's terrible. And why would your American soldiers act that way? And I said, well, do you think that every soldier in every country always acts the way they're supposed to act? Well, I didn't say anything else. Then somebody, then somebody else said, well, what do you think of the whole war? And I said, our president didn't call me and ask me what I thought of the war. Does your president call people and ask them what they think of going to war? But I didn't have to answer that. Amity says you can just say, look, I don't want to talk about anything political. I'm an English teacher. But I felt like if we were the only Americans that they were going to meet, that I should try to be as open as I could. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess that, telling them about Jesus on the wall or whatever, I suppose your husband found little other ways to be able to share the gospel without preaching.
Well, I think by watching us, one of the translators that was with us, we met as a team every morning to go over our lessons and to pray. And the first time that I looked up from prayer and his eyes were wide open and he said, I've heard about prayer, but I never heard anybody pray. So, I mean, his grandparents, he said, had been Taoists, but his parents immediately weren't anything. And, there's very few people that we met that had familiarity with a lot of, except for Christians. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to be said for being watched. I mean, maybe some good things,
Yes, and
not
that's
just bad
another
things.
responsibility. Yes, in the book that's coming out, um, one of the people on our team, China doesn't allow this anymore, but in 2006, one of the teachers could only go if she could take her 10-year-old son because she had nobody to watch him at home, and so he got the visa. And I said, well, if he gets a visa, God will work it out. Well, it was a plus in many ways, but it was a challenge in many other ways because kids just say whatever.
Oh.
So, yeah, that was an adventure that we hadn't imagined. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, this has really been interesting. Boy, I think we could go for hours and hours on all of your things, but we can all go to your books too to find out find out more. So, where can people find you?
Well, any place books are sold, so Barnes and Noble, Amazon. If you go to my website, Time to Create, TIME number two, create .info, that has probably places that you can click on right there to buy books too.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. What do you have a favorite scripture that you just love?
By grace are you saved through faith. Yes, that's God's grace and faith is what carries me through all the days.
Foundational, huh? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, for
definitely.
sure. Okay. Thank you so much, Virginia. This has really been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jan. I'm really glad that we got to talk. I've enjoyed you in the author circle, and this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Heartache is part of the human experience, and Virginia's first memoir, Grace Interlaced, reveals God can put a life back together even when it seems to have been damaged beyond repair. At age 12, a devastating house fire and death caused Virginia to disconnect from the emotions, lose trust in crucial relationships, and build a wall around her heart. Her historical novel, Wounded Dove, is based on the life of a young woman stricken with polio in the epidemic of the early 20th century in Worcester, Massachusetts. All the strength she mustered did not help protect her from the worst betrayal. For 8 different years, Dr. Heslinga worked with teachers, administrators, students, and communities in remote rural areas and highly populated international cities in 7 provinces in China. Her memoir series, set in China, is titled Did You Eat? A common greeting in areas that suffered years of famine. The China series includes cultural challenges, surprises, dangers, and transformation of people and beliefs. Book 1 is China's Sweet and Sour, set in a mining city in Inner Mongolia. Book 2, out December 12th, is China's Spicy and Salty, set in a small desert town with a team of teachers that includes a 10-year-old son of one of the teachers. His presence helps with some cultural tension but adds distress in others. Virginia is working on Book 3, China Sharp and Zesty,